Good morning, everybody. We just started our session. We're just giving folks a moment to join us and come in, and then we will get going. Welcome to the session today. Look at that, Lloyd. I'll do like a 10-second wait, and then we'll get going. If that's okay with you?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. 1 minute past 11. And again, welcome everybody. Welcome to the DVT Insights session. We're really happy to have Lloyd Hendricks with us today. Lloyd is the practice head for our mobile services at DVT, a world of experience in terms of helping customers take their journey in the mobile app space. Lloyd is here today to talk to us about what it takes to win in the mobile app space, something that I'm sure is near and dear to many people's hearts, given that it is a primary channel in terms of working with customers, as well as enabling your business and taking things forward in that space. Lloyd, welcome to the session. Really happy to have you with us. For our audience, Lloyd will present probably over the next 30 minutes to 40 minutes. And then after that, we'll take questions. If you do have any questions, you should have access to the Q&A function that should be there at the top of your screen, I think. Please do raise your questions there. I will pick those up and pose those through to Lloyd. And along the way, I'm sure that I will throw in a couple of curveballs just to keep Lloyd on his toes today. Lloyd, again, welcome to the session, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Carl. Cool. I will present quickly. Let me just share my screen. Cool. Can you see me?
Perfect. All good to go.
Great stuff. Yeah. Thanks for the welcome, Carl. I really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone that's here. Today's topic is going to be winning in the mobile first area. And this is really something near and dear to my heart. You know, mobile is the future for me and many of us. You know, mobile devices are in our pockets, and it's very important for us in the industry to make sure we compliant and working in the best possible way to serve our users. Okay, so we're going to actually go to this concept of understanding winning, and I think it's very important that winning is very unique for everyone. You know, we've got various different markets in the industry, banking, insurance, telematics, and various other industries that winning is going to be unique to each of them. And I really want, for those of you that are looking to enter into the market, or those of you that are currently in the market, to really understand what winning means to you. And this really starts with knowing your vision. And your vision is going to be unique to you. It's going to be unique to the users that you're going to service. And if you understand the vision and you get everyone rallied behind the vision, your traction into the market is going to be really seamless and very easy. So really look at it and try understand, you know, what the vision you have for your app and your entry into the industry. You can always build from there onwards, and starting with the MVP, you know, the minimum viable product, and understanding what your entry into the market will be is going to be a key element in driving your success towards winning. And, you know, I can use the example of, you know, we've got various health apps in the industry. We've got various rewarding apps, those type of things. Their vision is to drive you towards being healthier, drive you towards breaking down the barriers of the challenges we face on a day-to-day, and making sure that we are healthy, comfortable, and they reward us for it. That is their vision. But sometimes we lose the vision along the way. You know, we might add additional services. So just make sure that you stay true to your vision. The second topic that might contribute to your winning is really understanding your users and understanding them, you know, deeply. And it's very important that we get to understand our users and make sure that we're actually servicing their needs. You're not going to win in the industry if we are using apps that have the same functionality as all the other apps. You know, we want to keep users engaged in our apps, keep users, you know, informed in our apps. And one of the examples I use is I'll tie back to the health industry, where users are accessing your app to gain access to their health data, to gain access to those type of things. But that might not be where your vision is, but that becomes the core purpose of your users. Make sure that you understand that that's the core to your users, and understand that that is where your users are going to be mostly spending their time on your app. We don't want users uninstalling the app because it's not for them, it's not what they thought they were getting. And this is another key step in order for you to break down those barriers and keep users engaged in your app. The next one is know your boundaries. So, the same with all of us. Each of us have our boundaries. We all want to strive for the best. We all want to push down, the barriers. We want to come up with something new, and sorry, and really want to, push and shoot for the stars. But just know that, you're going to have various limitations that are imposed upon you, whether you're a business starting out or a business that's currently in the industry. Know the boundaries, and that helps narrow your focus and keep you narrowed down to keeping in line with your visions, keeping in line with what your users are going to need on a day to day. And I can use an interesting view from the banking industry, where the boundaries of breaking into new areas that multiple services are being offered. How much time is it going to take you to invest in that? To add another version of renewing your vehicle license, for instance, through your banking app. We can do it everywhere. We can do it at the post office. We can do it at various other, shopping centers, those type of things. How much value is that going to add versus staying within your boundaries, staying true to your vision, and keeping focused in that space? And then keeping it simple. So this one I think is very important, and it's an underestimated thing. So for instance, we have two different visions that you can look at, or two different examples that we can look at. So, taking the simple one of letting your users be logged in or continuously logged in. And I think that's something that we all like. When you're going to scroll on your social media or those type of things, you don't want to go through that login process. You don't want to go through these hoops in order to do it, unless you're really concerned about safety or the type of social media platform that you're using. But, let's say you're in a shopping center and you want to open your banking app. You don't want your banking app to automatically open. This is something we're all concerned about. We don't want to make sure that our vulnerabilities are revealed and people can easily access those things. But keeping it simple, in line with your vision, and all four of these points tied together, simple is going to be unique to you and unique to your users. And by having these four, understanding your vision and your users, knowing your limitations and your boundaries, but keeping it simple within that, ties all together. And that will be your definition of winning. That'll be how you break down the barriers into new areas, new user bases, those type of things. Okay, so we're going to move on. Yeah.
Sorry, before you go on, I promised a few curveballs, so I'm going to take you back there and see if I can't get you on the spot. It's always my ambition to try and go, hey, these fantastic people like Lloyd, they know everything, so I want to pull some of that incredible knowledge out of their head. Lloyd, with what you covered there, it came to mind for me to go, there was that concept of super apps a little while ago, apps that kind of did everything. And you've used a couple of examples where you've gone, well, in those super apps that enable you to do X, Y, and Z and hold you in one place and have everything there at your disposal. Some of the points that you've made kind of go, well, to compete in the world today, maybe that time for super apps has come and gone, and you need a more specific focus to an app that you're going to take out there if you're going to win.
Yeah, so I think there was a time before we had, the boom in the app industry. There was a time where if we could have one app that serviced multiple things, users wouldn't need to install other various apps to solve their problems. If we could solve their problems, that would be great. One app could do it all, and we wouldn't need to install other platforms or apps that serve us on those platforms. I think the challenge today is, why are people uninstalling apps? And it's because I've got two other apps that are doing the same thing, or I've got three other apps that do a similar service or provide me a similar service. So It's very unique, and I think that's where this understanding the winning comes from. Is winning is very unique to you, but when it comes to super apps, you're competing where, like you said, there was a boom, there was this need for it, but it seems like that need is dying off, and people are more inclined to have a narrow focus on, I want my exercise app, which rewards me to keep me focused, keep me on my exercise goals, keep rewarding me for achieving those goals. But if I have to now go through viewing how many funds I've got on my medical aid, or I've got to go past the claims process to get there. It's a frustrating process for a user, and maybe that's something where why are users opening their app that services their medical aid? It's not to go check their balance every day. To go check that I'm exercising, I'm doing what I need to, those type of things. So if I had a narrowed app, that app is more likely to stay installed, as opposed to if we had that same app and we weren't targeting to be healthy, and we weren't leveraging the reward system. How often would the user open that app unless they needed to claim? So it's those type of things. Is what's the purpose of the app? The one-stop shop doesn't seem to keep the apps installed. It actually seems, if there's enough one-stop shops, I'm going to go with the one I like it most. And I think that's also where that keep it simple comes from. The simple one-stop shops is going to be, where it really, really ties down to users staying engaged, staying involved in your app. I hope that answers your question.
It does. And then I think when we consult to customers, we sometimes use that analogy, always sometimes use that analogy of, it's like search. If your app doesn't make it to the first page, the probability of its use and the probability of its lifetime on somebody's phone goes down significantly. And I guess I'm going to ask you to think about the apps that are on your first page, Lloyd, and go, of those apps that are there, which of those do you think actually is paying attention to the 4 areas that you've said that are important to winning in the app space?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point, and I think if you had to, like, I mean, an industry one that we all know is succeeding, but might not be keeping it as simple as we've envisioned, is the likes of our chat messenger, our WhatsApps, those type of things. Why would I need additional services for it to become a social media, when the core vision and understanding the vision is, I need to chat with my family, I need to chat with my friends? That was their vision. That was the start. We went from an SMS era to, now where everything's digital, data is very easily accessible. Many people have access to these type of things. So the vision was, I want to quickly chat to my friend and keep it cost effective, those type of things. But now, the second we add more and more features to it, we're going to consume more and more data. We're now seeing very social media-like features trickling through onto these platforms, in the likes of shorts, those type of things. But that means more users are posting photos, more users are posting videos, those type of things. But that's consuming more and more data. At what point do we push the boundary, and that pushes us out of the scope of what the vision was? The vision was never to be a social media platform. It was supposed to be a chat messenger. And by narrowing it down and keeping it simple, yes, we can still add those additional services, but is it because users are more inclined to use other social medias and we're trying to keep users on the app? What is the purpose? So, I think it's a very interesting concept that you look at, is there's not many apps that are following a vision of what is true to our users and why are users using our app, as opposed to let's try get more users on because we're building something else. And in that case, maybe you do need to build another app rather than a one-stop shop. Have your 2 different verticals and keep it in that space.
Do you anticipate that's going to lead to those entrepreneurs that are out there, and maybe some of them are listening to you today, reinventing some of the simple vision apps that began their journey that way and have now moved on into adding all these other features, etc.? So somebody comes along and reinvents that messaging app to kind of go, well, all I'm going to do is simplify design and go back to the core tenets. Do you see that coming about?
Yeah, so I think it's let's use the big topic in the industry. the AI, So how do we look at the simplicity of how AI can assist us? You can quickly type a prompt and you get your response. Okay, I don't need to go through many hoops to get through that process. It's a very simple process. So how do we re-envision and keep users engaged based on existing, overly complicated things? Users are more likely to have that simplicity preference. How quickly can I get done what I have this app installed to do? And I think from an entrepreneurial point of view, we are seeing, especially like in the likes of the dating industry, the simpler the dating app, the faster traction they're getting. There's not overly complicated features. Online dating, and we can use the whole concept of swipe left, swipe right. Such a simple idea, but I'm not having to click a button. I'm not having to go through a 3-step process, those type of things. It's quick, very simple. Yes, no, let's go, those type of things. And that's where the simplicity succeeds. That's why apps that are big in the industry have succeeded, is because they actually spent the time to understand what the vision was, what the users need, and keeping it simple, within the boundaries of their realm.
Great. Thank you, Lloyd. Great answers.
Cool. Okay, so we'll go to the next one. So these are key steps in order to win. So now that we understand what winning means, there's going to be steps that we need to follow, and in no means are these the only steps, but these will be the right steps for you to start looking at. So compliance, there's a very big push on compliance across the globe, and this is in the form of app stores, in form of government regulations, various device limitations, sorry. So devices have their own limitations on what is compliant, what's not. And these are things like, background activity, those type of things. And I'll use a use case. One of our clients, wasn't aware of the App Store limitations. So for instance, app stores require, if you have a create user flow, you need to have an equivalent delete user flow. So if you choose to delete your account, you need that feature within your app in order for you to just be compliant to be listed on various app stores. So this can be a barrier to entry, and there are multiple other use cases that come from compliance. So just be mindful that, when it comes to distributing those type of things, you might have a delayed launch date because you missed a compliance hurdle, or you missed a compliance metric that you didn't include that might still need to be developed or added to your app in order for you to actually just list and get into the market and compete with others. The other one is meaningful innovation, and I think this also ties into those large apps that provide multiple services. What is innovation, from a feature perspective, and we can use the MyFitnessPal as a very good example of when they use a meaningful feature. So for instance, MyFitnessPal, for those of you that don't know, is to track users' macros, micros, all your nutrients, everything from protein, carbs, sugars, those type of things. They're on the back of every packet of any product that we buy, and we generally would type that in to figure out and weigh it and those type of things. But how they found a meaningful innovation was they were like, let's build a barcode scanner into the app. Let's put a barcode scanner that all of that data that the user needs to enter, which is complicated, it's not simple, coming back to our point on the previous slide, they can now scan a barcode. All the data gets automatically pulled from a database that's available through the app. And you just need to say, I am having X amount of this product. And then it will automatically calculate all the nutrients for you. And that is a very meaningful innovation. If I had to look at the same industry and the same example, there are other competitors in the industry where they were trying to follow that simplicity and narrow their vision down. They're using AI where you can just scan your bowl of food. But, when it comes to point 4 that I'll touch on now, how much trust does the user have that you're going to know how much protein is in my sauce, how much carbs are in or sugars are in that sauce? Those are things where, is it meaningful innovation? Does the simplicity weigh off or trade off the trust that the user has to install your app? users knowing that your database is up to date and you're scanning the barcode means I have a trust in the process you're following. As where if AI is just scanning my photo and scanning my food and the photo, it's assuming what type of nutrients are in there, that can limit us in terms of the innovation we're using and the trust and longevity we build. So really looking at meaningful innovation. Let's also look at things like the chatbots. Certain chatbots have a place in the market. It's very meaningful to users where maybe on a news agency, you want to quickly pull up, hey, is there any new news on elections or those type of things? And the chatbot will quickly pull up 10 or 15 articles that have been released for you. But, when you're trying to contact your bank and you're trying to get through that chatbot, the first focus you have is I want to chat to a human. I don't want to chat to an AI. I really need to speak to a human because I've got a problem on my account or those type of things. So understanding the meaningful innovation that you have and the relevance of it, flashy features don't always win your users over. They don't keep them engaged and keep that longevity because it's a frustrating process. And that will also tie back to that keeping it simple. Then point number 3, so there are multiple technologies we can use from the likes of hybrid and native technologies. So each of these have their pros and cons, in terms of performance, flexibility, scalability, drawbacks, those type of things. There's also, limitations when it comes to device hardware and the performance metrics that you get from having a raw on-device app versus a hybrid technology. And a use case that I can use, and maybe this is something to think about, is hybrid was invented because we wanted to target multiple platforms. We wanted to distribute to the likes of Android, iOS, the Huawei's, those type of things. The hybrid served that purpose because we had to develop natively for each of those platforms in order to get into the industry. But if we are using hybrid, but we're not targeting that, we are actually slowing down the hybrid platform. We are actually not focusing on, hey, I'm going to have a better longevity if I target a native platform, if I'm only looking to target my user base, understanding your users deeply on the previous slide. If my user base is only using Android devices, why would I use a hybrid technology unless I've got the plan in the future? And that's where knowing your vision ties in. If you've got that plan into the future to, hey, I want to scale up a user base that's on the iOS or the Huawei side, maybe a hybrid technology is for me. But there are limitations. So I think for those of you that are using Apple devices, there's a new Apple version that's just come out. The native technology would have provided a beta version for you to already start developing those features into your app before the launch. The hybrid technology will generally have a lag. So it'll take a month or two for the hybrid technologies frameworks and integrations to build up to integrate with all those new flashy features. Is this going to be a problem for you? And understanding those limitations is really going to be important to the focus of winning. The goal here is to win in the mobile era. And then trust and security. So this is very important. I think a lot of us, get frustrating phone calls from people we don't know, from companies we don't know. And a lot of the times we ask ourselves, how did they get my data? Where did they get my cell phone number or my details? And this also applies to, sometimes we get scammed out of our own money and those type of things because our data is so regularly available. One of the things that complements longevity in an app is the trust and security that you build into it. So, being compliant, looking at our first point, being compliant with the App Store is like a level 1 trust. We have trust that your app is compliant with what our device manufacturers are requiring you to do. We can't track users in the background. So obviously none of us want our location just being pinged out to somewhere we don't know. You have to actually inform the users, those type of things as part of the compliance. And then security. I mean, we live in an industry where, cyber crimes is a big problem, and there's a lot of industries that protect us, but making sure that you're security compliant, using specialized on-device chip storage for sensitive information, those type of things, by utilizing that, we can then build trust for why someone will use our app. And we can go back to the AI thing, and the AI hype and concern at the moment is how much of my data as a business is being shared outside of this AI, how much of my intellectual property is being passed on. And we are only trusting when there's a disclaimer saying your data is localized to your business, to your ecosystem. It's not going to be shared for any training models, those type of things. then we trust the tool. So think of it as the same. If you were building a mobile app, if you can build in that trust and the disclaimer that your information is safe and secure, and it's not going to be shared, and it's not going to be provided to various other markets, you will likely have a longer user longevity with your app if you put those disclaimers in place, forward with the way you're thinking of protecting users information. And these 4 steps can really help you win in the industry. Carl, do you want to ask any questions on this one?
Oh, absolutely. Lloyd, in your experience, have you seen a much bigger focus coming towards the compliance, trust, and security aspect in terms of the stores themselves in submission of apps?
Yeah, so a good example is, there's certain hybrid technologies that use what we call a progressive web app, which is a website that can scale onto a mobile device. They wrap it in a web container and then list it on the App Store. When it comes to trust and security for something like that, is a lot of the times you can indirectly bypass App Store compliance because you have control of the web's generation, the way the website is generated. Once it's gone onto the App Store, you just change the website's generation process, and now you've essentially bypassed the App Store in order to get past certain regulations. So we're seeing a lot more demand from the app stores when it comes to utilizing a progressive web app where you need to be compliant on multiple fronts in order to just get onto the App Store. You can't just change the way it is. There's also this concept of how often is your app updated. And you'll see the app stores they're narrowing down. It used to be 2 years, but I think they're narrowing down that window where how often is your app updated? Because if you have a progressive web app that was listed on the App Store 5 years ago and you've never updated it, it means you've never come to new regulations. You never actually considered the new regulations. So you're still on old regulations when it might have not been a problem in the industry. So understanding that, having that trust and security through the compliance is like a hand-in-hand regulation, but the app stores are clamping down more and more on this because of the likes of new subscription frameworks that are being built into devices. With all our virtual wallets these days, those type of things, we can pay for multiple services very easily. So being compliant, utilizing those tools is very important, and the app stores are really clamping down in various regions. So this comes back to understanding the region you're in. The compliance might be slightly different for you if you are in South Africa versus Europe or in the States, those type of things. There's going to be different compliance levels for the app stores in those regions based on what their governments require of them.
So Lloyd, how does an app product owner or a developer or architect in this space actually stay up to date with what those compliance requirements are going to be? Obviously, they could consult with somebody like you and the team that you have in terms of doing app audits, but how do they start their own knowledge journey, or at least refreshing their knowledge in terms of compliance requirements with the stores?
So it's a really interesting one. So if you are looking to start out, the barrier to entry is a little bit harder because you get all those details by being on the App Store or having a license with the various app stores. So by you registering your company or business with the app stores, you get access to new releases, new regulations. You actually have to accept various privacy policies and changes that happen on the App Store before you can relist your apps. So the app stores are already assisting you on that journey, but a lot of the times an executive in the business will be the owner of the app store, and that doesn't always filter down. They just click I accept, and then when it comes to the review process, it becomes quite challenging. So having your internal feedback loops from the app store owners will inform your users, developers, product owners on, hey, they are retiring this functionality. We are no longer going to be compliant. We have to update to a newer version. Separate to that, developers have their own access to developer documentation where there's actually clear disclaimers on what functionality is going to be removed from the ecosystem due to either security risks, or there's a newer version of it that's going to support the newer functionality, or it's going to be a requirement for you to be compliant. So let's use background activity, for instance. There's been various changes on background activity on the device hardware side so that you don't drain the battery too quickly, or you don't, push the boundaries of what the device can use just by in the background you're polling the whole time. Now there's a new compliance where the operating system decides when your app can do background activity, and you would need to make sure that when you're utilizing that service and functionality, you're compliant with how the operating system and the app stores allow you to wake up apps in the background, those type of things. But that's something that's evolved over time, and developers have had to adapt over time. And understanding that is very important, that this could have a limitation on, is my app pulling information in the background, those type of challenges that, a lot of us need. Information being pulled in the background is a really big thing, but being compliant is a very tricky ask when you don't understand how it's evolved over time.
So in connection with that, do you have particular recommendations around DevOps practices that are relevant to mobile projects themselves specifically, that help incorporate this into what people are doing to be compliant in the process of developing the apps?
Yeah, so I mean, there's various different DevOps, initiatives you can do. Ultimately, the human factor is very important, because the human is going to be the first one to get the notification of the compliance. But if you build in processes through your likes of your linting tools or your code analysis tools, your IDE is going to spit out the warnings when it comes to compliance. So it's going to say, in the next version of the operating system, this piece of code you're using is going to be depreciated. So be mindful of that. Your IDE gives you the warnings ahead of the time when code is going to be removed, compliance is going to be lost, those type of things. So in terms of the DevOps process, as long as you're listening to the warnings, listening to those type of things. So if you had to build in a process in your DevOps pipeline to say, hey, listen, is there going to be a versioning warning from the code that I've just built or analyzed or whatever it may be, you can set a flag that, hey, we need to, as a business, go investigate that and utilize that point as a checkbox before you just start pushing to app stores. Invest early, understand early in the process, so that you can be ahead of the curve and not behind it.
Thank you, Lloyd. And in the trust and security space, I think, at least my perception, particularly with iOS 18 just out now, and the support for Apple Intelligence basically being part of the foundation that it's setting, that use of Apple Intelligence, one of the primary things that I noted about that was almost the closure of the ecosystem in the Apple space, of basically having users inside of the Apple bubble and the reach out to AI agents and AI solutions and services beyond that, while Apple protected identity, data, and association of that user to any of those services. Do you see that as an ongoing trend that's going to be echoed elsewhere, of the different mobile apps or app ecosystems really echoing that and becoming little bubbles of users that basically go, we're taking responsibility and accountability for protecting you, even though we know the broader technology landscape is one that requires connectivity and interaction?
So I think it's a trend we are seeing. So when it comes to the developer side of the app world, we're seeing the AI code assistants, those type of things, being localized to on device, and that's not just limited to the Apple ecosystem. We are seeing it in the other ecosystems as well. Coming back to that trust and security, where businesses don't want their IP shared outside of the system, outside of the ecosystem that they've built within their organization. So having this on-device AI assist their developers, speed up the processes, identifying the compliance, constraints, those type of things, builds a lot of trust and security. We are seeing, not just in the Apple ecosystem, obviously Apple being at the forefront of most, initiatives in the industry, we are already seeing the others start following along. And this would also come down to the way Apple and various ecosystems have built their hardware over time. So, for instance, a few years back, we didn't have the Face ID, we had the fingerprint. And, if someone, stole your device, the best way to get around it was they couldn't brute force it. They actually had to desolder the security chip off the device and resolder it back on. And a lot of the way the device hardware is running these days is there's a separate portion where AI runs, where security information is stored, those type of things. So coming back to that trust and security, if your ecosystem supports that, you can still store your users' data on those type of services that your hardware provides. And the same applies to how Apple is saying, okay, right, our processors can handle a portion that all the intelligence is run locally on the device without compromising performance, those type of things. So there is a trend in that way, but as an app builder, you can also follow that trend by making sure you follow the processes that Apple would be doing with their intelligence, but you can do it with your app, keeping everything on device and only sending, stuff to the server as you really need to, or offsite as you really need to.
And you mentioned PWAs earlier on and the compliance requirements that are connected there. Is there anything that you're aware of for older apps that they're about to hit a wall on soon or already, where they're going to have to re-engineer or introduce changes in order to still be compliant and consequently listed?
Yeah, so there was actually a big industry hype recently in Europe, where all progressive web apps were going to be delisted off European stores. And there was a big market uproar because obviously there's an exclusion now for all web-based apps. And Apple eventually went back on the compliance, but I do feel they will revisit the compliance side of it. Not, you can't list a progressive web app on the App Store, but there might be those compliance hurdles that you need to go through from a trust and security, how you're integrating, making sure that you're not changing your app as it goes past the App Store to a different type of app, those type of things. So I do think there are some hurdles that may come through in terms of compliance, but I think the risk of having your app delisted off the App Store, those are very clear. You have to have regular updates, but in terms of you're not going to be able to list a progressive web app, I think that ship sailed because of the industry backlash that came from it.
Okay, great. And are there any sort of additional steps that you're recommending to clients in terms of compliance checking before they submit to stores?
So the stores are very much clear when it comes to submitting. So you have various submission processes. You don't just submit and then it goes to the App Store. There's various layers that you have to go through before you get to the App Store. But in terms of what we advise, we regularly update ourselves on the compliance hurdles. We stay up to date with the industry trends. When a new version of, for instance, iOS 18 came out recently, going and reading the documentation, and then actually advising our staff and our developers on, hey, these are the hurdles your clients might be facing. So from a consulting perspective, where we can consult on the challenges and the compliance hurdles that are coming, we can preemptively prepare people for it. And we do have clients, in the industry, which we've advised. So for instance, if you've got a progressive web app, coming back to what we're discussing, and you've got a subscription framework that is using a third-party subscription provider, listing yourself on the App Store means you can no longer use that provider due to App Store compliance. You have to use the subscription framework that Apple, for instance, provides or Google provides. And that means additional work. It means additional hurdles, getting onto the App Store, those type of things. But we advise upfront, it's going to take you X amount of time if you had to have this redeveloped. You need to be mindful of, if you're still supporting the old subscription framework, those users who are already subscribing there, we need to inform Apple that they are subscribed, or Google that they are just subscribed on a different platform, and what are the implications. You can't have a user subscribing twice to the same service. And so we advise on the hurdles that they're going to go through, because we keep ourselves up to date with what's coming in the industry and the challenges that various barriers to entries are going to provide.
Great. Thank you, Lloyd. Again, great answers, I think.
Cool. Okay, so I think, we've understood winning, the key elements to winning, but where do we start? I think that's an important question. And there's this beautiful thing called analytics, and there's a lot of providers out there, and a lot of the times we use it for performance related issues, so my app's crashing or data goes missing, those type of things. And there's a lot of benefits to doing that, but at the same time we can start utilizing the analytics and leveraging it to understand users' behavior, and we can tie back to rewarding users for certain behaviors. If a user has to click 3 or 4 times to get to view their exercise log or whatever it may be, we can already see the behavior of the features they're circumventing in order to get to the functionality that is really core to them and really core to the users themselves. And by utilizing this data, we can then optimize our app to say, hey, listen, let's provide that additional functionality on a menu option and keep what's really true to the bulk of users, and you'll be able to see bulk data from it. And that comes to the second point, of optimizing based on the data. So if you can reorder the events on your app to be like they on the homepage get to see their exercise log and all of those type of things, and how they're doing in the reward process versus, that's a hidden functionality amongst your other features. Optimize your app based on that data, but don't exclude. I'm not saying remove the functionality, just put it in a more meaningful space and optimize your app to actually keep your users on your app rather than them getting frustrated. And that's the biggest challenge I think a lot of apps face, is the App Store reviews are brutally honest, and look at the data, look at what the App Store reviews are saying, and see how you can optimize based on that data. The other thing we've been talking a lot about is compliance. So I always say start with compliance. It's great having this vision of everything we want to do and what areas we want to breach into, and this amazing idea we have. But, are there compliance hurdles that we're going to need? And there are various App Store guidelines, on how to be compliant, what you need to watch out for. And then obviously, device regulations, the security that comes with your device. Understanding that before you start your initiative is a big win. If you're already on your journey, how do you refresh yourself in order to be aligned with the latest compliance trends, those type of things? And then tech limitations. So we did touch on this earlier. So the various tech limitations of hybrid versus native. What is the user experience? And a nice example is utilizing the way your operating system. So let's just take the calculator on your device. Everyone's accustomed to their calculator because it looks and feels and operates in a certain manner based on the device manufacturer that you've got and the operating system version and those type of things. When it comes to the hybrid side of it, you might not have that full look and feel. Then you need to know that you need to design your features to try accompany that. It might mean a few UI changes, making sure you adhere to various guidelines on how to optimize your components and features to look and feel the way users feel comfortable. And there are limitations to your tech. So when you're starting, coming back to the point of, do we choose native or hybrid? You need to know your vision. Am I going to be targeting multiple app stores, multiple devices, or am I targeting one and that's the ecosystem I'm going to be on for a while? So understanding that your journey will be different and winning is different for everyone. But if you've got that vision and that focus, you'll be able to narrow it down based on the tech limitations. Things like access to device hardware. If you're going to be using, we've been talking about AI. If you're going to be using device hardware for image recognition, those type of things, you're going to need a very fast, easy access to the camera to be able to visualize that and pass it off to various AI models. And then identifying key engagement drivers. And I think we were talking about this when we were talking about analytics. Your users are going to be driven to use and service certain methods and methodologies in your app to get their functionality out. So you've got to always remember what are we doing for the user? What problem have we solved for the user? And understanding that, and that is your engagement driver. Why is my user using my app? Are they circumventing the features and methods to get to that functionality, and use that to drive? And you can use that core functionality to drive additional services, but make sure you stay true to what are my users using it for, not what do I think my users are using it for. And I think that's very important in the industry. We don't want to lose the interest of our app so that they uninstall it. Questions on this one, Carl?
Always questions, Lloyd. I think the bit that I'm getting as a takeaway so far from what you've covered is that the approach in winning in the app space these days is far more than just the technical capability of delivering an app. There's UX consideration, there's actual use metrics that you should be paying attention to. There's the compliance dimension, there's the selection of the technology strategy that's going into this. Would you say that the development, maintenance, and progression of apps has become more complex and demanding in terms of bringing together different disciplines? Or is it still a case of if you build it, they will come?
So I think it has been more complicated as time goes on. I think, and this is the key vision I have is always design with a 5-year mindset in mind. So coming back to knowing your vision, know what the 5 years should look like or could look like for you. And if there are going to be various other integrations or accesses that you're going to need and functionality you're going to provide, you may have hurdles based on a technological limitation. But if we look back and there's a few research studies on the heat map of articles, and there's a F that's how articles are written and the heat map on how people read. It's a very interesting way on how human behavior influences these things. Human behavior on how they engage with your app is going to influence whether your app stays installed or not. And I think where we're losing in the industry is the app store is so saturated with multiple apps that provide the same services. You've got to stand out from the rest. But if you make this seamless process for your users, and that may mean over time you have limitations integrating with other frameworks and those type of things. But if you stay true to your vision, true to what your app was designed to do, you're going to have that longevity and success over your competitors. If you're already in the industry and you need to stand out, then that's where the optimizing based on the data that you can get your hands on helps you, because now you optimize, you put an update, you hype it, people install it, and then off you go. People are more likely to use yours because you're a trusted provider that they've been using for various times. So I hope that answers what you're looking for. It is a very unique case based on what does winning mean for each person.
It does, and it's led me to perhaps the corollary to this. Apps are in the technology space and can require significant investment. Technology changes very quickly and dramatically in very short periods of time. We've seen that with the advent of generative AI and what that's meant in terms of bringing people into the space and leveraging other AI capabilities alongside generative AI. The point of that is to say, on the negative side, Lloyd, what are the key metrics to watch and make a decision on in respect to going, this app is not going to work and we should kill it off or simplify it?
So that's a very, very interesting thing. So I think there's various things that we can look at. I think the biggest red flag that we look at is your App Store reviews. That's the first thing people do. It's the same when you buy a product off an online marketplace or store. The first thing you go look is the reviews. Is this thing going to break? Is it not? Am I going to get there? And I think your App Store reviews tell you where the health of your app is at, and where the health of should we continue down this road or not. I don't think I'm not an advocate for killing off apps. I think Google does that very well, and I think it has hurt a lot of people in the industry. There is always value to be had. It's just, when do we simplify, like you asked? At what point do you simplify your app to providing what your users want? And I think generally that is a curve that happens, like you said, generative AI has gone through this hype, but that hype is the initial phase. How do we keep the longevity there? How do we keep the future there? And I think that's important. Generative AI, if they become too complex and you have to go through too many hurdles in order to utilize it, are you going to utilize it versus what we were talking about earlier, a simple prompt and you get an output, And I think a lot of businesses go through that. How do I generate more revenue for this app or generate more revenue from my app? So you add, but then at some point, all that adding has cost you a lot of money when your users are only using the simple functionality. And we can go back to the banking industry. I think that's a good use case, is how much of the ROI is on the additional frills versus how many times are people logging into the bank to check their funds. Rewarding someone for managing their funds and those type of things is a better view to look at than providing them a way to renew their vehicle license, those type of things. So, it might not be canning the app or simplifying the app. It might just be optimizing based on my user keeps coming to this page. They like this page. They like what this has to offer. How can I provide them a value added service? So rewarding them for good financial behaviors, those type of things.
Great. Thank you, Lloyd.
Cool. My second last slide. I think, Carl, we've got 10 minutes left there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So it's important, and I think this is always something that is overlooked, is asking the right questions. So when we look at deciding whether we're going to go down a path, those type of things, we should be asking ourselves or our broader colleagues or business partners, whatever it may be, these key questions, and it will give us a good indication of where to start and targeting that MVP or what our users are utilizing our apps for, those type of things. So I call these the winning questions. So IT does not exist without solving a problem, and the same is for an app. People have apps because it solves a problem in their day-to-day. So what problem are we solving for our users? There's no point in building another alarm clock or calculator, because you're not going to solve a problem unless you are solving something like there's sleep tracking with your alarm clock, and users might be interested in that. You're solving a problem where they might be having a bad night's sleep, or they want to know, but at what times of the night. If your alarm clock provides them that might be solving a problem for your user, as opposed to just a general alarm clock. How does our app stand out from our competitors? And we use that exact same answer. Alarm clocks are alarm clocks, calculators are calculators. Does my calculator have a budget functionality in so that I can manage my finances better, or those type of things? You're now not just a calculator, you've provided an additional functionality that stands out from the other calculators. So, and this can apply to you in your industry, and this is your focus on your vision, but researching your competitors, understanding your competitors is a very key element. And I use the example of, before you guys go write an exam, whatever industry you're in, we've all written exams, whether it's at school or not. You have to go research and study in order to pass the exam. If we want to win in the industry, we need to go study and research and understand our competitors and understand our users in order to win and pass that exam. So just be mindful of how you stand out, how you can innovate through meaningful innovation, those type of things. Coming from meaningful innovation, what features add the most value to our users? And that's where we can leverage our focus and analytics together. Is we wanted to provide, and we can go back to the banking industry, a safe space for our users to store their money. That is what adds the most value to them. Is I know my money is secure, safe, nobody's going to steal it from me. That is the most valuable feature to our user. And centering your app around that. It's the same whether it's in the health industry. If there's a health and fitness app and you want to be centering your app around that so that you have a competitive edge in winning. And these are the questions that you yourself shouldn't be answering. It shouldn't be, unless you are obviously building this app yourself and you want to get into the industry yourself. But a lot of the times, this is a discussion that should be had because everyone's got different perspectives, and it's important to know something that adds value to me might not add value to you. And by getting user data and having, and Carl, you mentioned the design element. Design and UX is very important in our industry, where understanding our users' experience and designing to complement that based on what features add the most value to users helps us win in this goal of winning in the mobile first era. And then how can we simplify the user experience? I think we've touched on this quite heavily throughout this talk. I think it's important that I think there's a metric in a study that if anything takes more than 2 clicks, users don't get interested. So if you've got multiple clicks to get somewhere, how do we simplify that so that the users have a 2-click max process to get to what they're looking for? Whether that's adding a menu bar or a tab bar or having simple buttons and icons on an additional functionality. So tying back to the health and rewards, in the health industry, if I've got, hey, I logged an hour's worth of exercise today, I might have an expand button that tells me, oh, this is all your heart rate data, those type of things, rather than navigating to a new screen, those type of things. So how do we simplify the user experience further is important. And then that gives me to any questions that anyone's got.
Fantastic, Lloyd. And to our audience, again, please, if you do have questions that you would like to pose to Lloyd, just raise those in our Q&A function. I haven't got anything there yet from anybody. And in the interim, I might just throw 1 or 2 more questions from my side through to Lloyd. Lloyd, while our audience is thinking of what they want to pose to you, I just want to ask you, in terms of big technology factors that are coming along, trends that are going to impact mobile development and mobile apps, are there any particular things that you have front and center of mind going, hey, we really need to be paying attention to this?
So, I mean, AI is hype in the industry, but meaningful use of AI, I think, is a big challenge that a lot of companies are facing. Is how do we find meaningful value out of it? People want to leverage AI for various purposes, but AI on a chatbot might be something that provides a lot of value with the new form of an AI, not just a chatbot that's regurgitating information. Something that feels a little bit more closer to human, can investigate further, those type of things. So I think AI is a big factor coming up. And we were talking about Apple Intelligence and running on device. I think that is something that a lot of us haven't actually thought about. Is Apple's providing that functionality. There are going to be touch points that we can integrate with that AI. So we don't need to install a third party, those type of things. We might have access to on-device AI solutions. How does our app provide the integration points? And I think it's very similar to the likes of wearable devices and watch apps. Your watch app is an extension of your base app that's installed on the phone. The same, AI should be an extension of your app that is installed on the phone. And how do we leverage it to be like, you have a trend of exercise and here's a notification for you based on the data we provide the AI. We can help users and based on the focus and the vision that we have, we can tailor the AI to leverage it to keep the users engaged in our app through the AI that's on device. So I think AI is a big aspect, second to security. I think everyone in today's age is very security conscious. Everyone wants to know that their data and security is safe, and it's very important for us. So I think that's something that's being clamped down more and more and more as the industry goes on. And how do we keep up to date with preventing those challenges for the users and building the trust that we are compliant in the security space?
Thank you, Lloyd. And what about augmented reality? I don't know, to my appreciation of what's happened with it, it just hasn't yet found massive traction. It just hasn't yet become something that every app is going, I need to build in the AR capabilities in order to have my user base happy.
Yeah, so I think augmented reality is going through a few different hurdles in the industry at the moment. So obviously Apple with their Apple Vision goggles and all of that has caused a little bit of more interest in augmented reality. But realistically, it comes down to, is this simple enough for my user to use? So for instance, there's a few apps in the industry where you want to paint the walls in your house a different color. Now you can just look through your phone and go look, oh, my room being green or pink or whatever it may be will look like this. And you can build in as a paint manufacturer, you can build that functionality, but then you can also suggest based on leveraging AI and augmented reality together, saying, well, your floor color is this is a complementary color to your floor color, and those type of things. And you can suggest colors, or they can just play with colors. So in that space, it would make sense because you're attracting users, you're giving them a fun experience, and they're going to buy your product after you've suggested it to them. So it makes sense there. In terms of innovation, augmented reality doesn't have a lot of innovation currently, and I think it's because every device has various levels of cameras, various levels of quality, those type of things, and on-device hardware supporting high graphics, fidelity of models and those type of things. So it is something that might have an uptick. I think the market has shifted where augmented reality is more for how do we provide a better experience for users in their day-to-day, as opposed to let me pick up my phone and look through the camera and see something. It's, with the vision goggles and those type of things, it's how do we communicate more effectively to friends across the globe, or how can I have additional screens without buying additional screens, those type of things, where they're trying to leverage functionality as opposed to the use case of augmented reality.
And that got me thinking about something else completely different, but I'll pose it anyway. In the mobile app space, Lloyd, are there particular considerations in respect to enabling those apps for things like Apple CarPlay and then the Android version of the same?
So, from an augmented reality point of view, I always visualized some form of number plate recognition being something that could be leveraged, those type of things. Or, if we're going to leverage the cars ecosystem, but that comes down to the challenge that we have with the cameras and those type of things. So in the mobile space, your Apple CarPlays and those type of services is basically your phone is taking over the device and running its its software on the device. For us to tap into device, like the vehicle hardware, those type of things becomes a challenge. So, for instance, you get an engine light on your car, you need to go to the manufacturer to find out why. But if we had better established protocols and interfaces in order to integrate, we could have a meaningful message being like your coolant's low, your car's going to overheat, or we could look at a different warning on the system because you're getting too close to the car next to you, or those type of things where we can leverage and provide that functionality. But I think it's still growing in the industry, where I think the next step for the likes of CarPlay and Android Auto is very much taking over all the screens. So the digital speedometers, and providing you that customization where you can put your temperature here and your speed there, and you can play around with it and make it customized to your look and feel that you find value. In terms of utilizing sort of augmented reality, I think that's still quite a step away, but we don't know, the industry can turn tomorrow. So let's see. It's Tesla's doing it to a certain extent, but not through augmented reality, but through the sensors on their vehicle, where you can see where there's a truck or people walking in the street, those type of things on a map, but it's not necessarily augmented reality.
And I apologize, I've forced us to go over with my questions. There is one question from Carmen that we'll take before we close out. And Carmen's question was, is there an app out there that ticks all the boxes in terms of what companies should aspire to?
Personally, my view is no. And I'm an advocate. We can't have a perfect app, and like you said, the industry is evolving so quickly. If you're not staying up to date with the latest trends, keeping up to date with the latest compliance, there will not be an app that is always in that perfect nature. I think there's glimpses and points of time where we can have those apps and be like, this is great, this is why I installed the app, and this is what I wish every app would be like. But over time, that might change because they need to adapt to the industry and move forward. So my personal view is there isn't a perfect app. We can only aspire to be as perfect as we can be.
And keeps all of us that are involved in mobile apps busy currently and into the future, I'm sure. And with that, Lloyd, again, thank you so much for taking the time today to have you, to be here and present your knowledge around the mobile apps. I think that was most enlightening in terms of giving us a view of what should be thought of in order to win in the mobile era. Thank you, Lloyd, and to our audience, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to having you again with us on another DVT Insights session. The next one will be coming up fairly soon in the coming weeks, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, Carl.